Welcome to the Life Illuminated podcast. I'm Maggie Kelly, your host, and I'm excited and honored today to introduce us to Sadhu Dah. He is a practitioner of Thai animistic practices and traditions. So, welcome, first of all.
Pleasure to be here.
So, tell us what that means. What does that mean?
Well, it's as complicated or as simple as we want to make it. A simple way of explaining it would be if you think about in the United States how you have various different indigenous practices of Native Americans, it tends to fall into the realm of shamanism or animistic origins. And it would be no different than looking at other places in the globe and knowing that there are also forms of animism and shamanism that exist there. The type of shamanism and animistic practices that I follow happen to be exclusive to Southeast Asia.
And do you know how those are different from, say, the shamanism I practice from Peru, the Caro tradition?
Yeah. So what's really interesting about Thai shamanism in particular is it's not actually purely Thai. See, before the 14th century and the introduction of Theravada Buddhism, we had basically a lot of Burmese Nat worship influence. You had Khom, Khmer, Bareng, Banbun, many different like melding pots of culture and traditions that were practiced throughout the region of Siam. And then when Buddhism kind of came forward and united the kingdom of Thailand, and then it later just became Thailand itself and kind of shrunk down a little bit, you are not able to erase all of those generations of practice, and they just kind of melded into Buddhism. And so that's why the Buddhism in Thailand is so uniquely different, because it has elements of the occult magic and these kind of spell workings and rituals that we only find in Thai Buddhism. It's at a point now where you can't separate the Buddhism from the magic. They're one and the same.
That's pretty fascinating, really. So when you're talking about occult and magic and spell working, give me an example of what that looks like.
So, I guess a good representation would be like if I was using comb traditions like KHOM, you have these little symbols that belong to an ancient language that have an inherent power to them. Much the same as when we are talking about bij like syllables in like Hindu practices of just even, the uttering the phrase of na or ma, like there's an intrinsic power, a vibrational frequency behind it. These spells are in these symbols in much the same fashion. And when you align them in certain patterns or shapes, you could say we're playing with geometry in a way, geometric spells. And then you have the element of sympathetic magic that's being induced. You have the element of spirits and deities and the use of herbs. So, a really small example I could give is we have something called like choklap. Choklap is like wealth manifestation magic. So one of the things I could do is I could take a specific yant spell that is for this, that carries that frequency, that vibration. I put it on a material that intrinsically has value, has wealth, like let's say a very old collector's coin. And then I would take that coin with this yant and I would put it in a cemetery, bury it in front of the grave of a millionaire. And then I would come and collect it again after a new moon cycle. And then I can pray over it with specific kata, mantras, chants that we have. And I can cultivate my you would say kind of like your meditative power, right? So my soxit like can put the transmission of power into it, and then I can gift that to somebody to help bring more wealth and manifestation into their life.
Wow. So that's a really, really cool process because you're taking something that already has intrinsic value and then you're imparting ancient wisdom into it or the spirits of the past into it. And it's actually a talesman in some way, sort of just a representation, a physical representation of the commitment you have to this person or this particular thing you're trying to manifest. And you leave it there for a full moon cycle. And what's the significance of that? Just so our audience knows.
Depends on how you want to approach that, but I would say, just to keep things simple, it's more of like the tide of a yuga, right? The length of a cycle. So in 1 month, in the varying states of a lunar cycle, you have a peaking of energy and then it culminates to a head. It's very similar to the practice of why monks shave their head in some traditions. They grow the hair out for 30 days. They allow that energy to peak and be cultivated through their meditative practices. And then at the peak of it, they shave their heads. So they're raising that energy, continually raising that energy, cutting the hair, raising the energy, cutting the hair. So we do the same in a sense with these types of rituals is we're cultivating the power of what we're doing in the ritual, and then we're letting it amplify through nature's way of amplification. And then we come and we take it back once it has received that amplification.
And then when you take it back, where does it go? I missed that piece. Where does it go? Does it go back to the person you're working with to manifest whatever, in this case, abundance?
Well, first, there's a purification of sorts because when we do certain things like buy a crystal from a shop, right? It's going to have some energies on it that maybe we don't want. So we have ways of cleansing it, right? So even though we're adding these powerful energies and we have these sacred processes in the way that we're going about it, there's still little things that we might have picked up, like some extra death energy we didn't want from the graveyard, right? And so we do a purification through what would simply just be understood as meditating and putting power into it and purifying it through metta, loving kindness. And that once it reaches that perfect state, then it's kind of like, okay, now I can give this to you. And now I can give you these words of power. And when you use this amulet, and you want to get the power from it stimulating in your life, you'll carry it with you. You'll put the coin in your palms. You'll rub it together. You say nachaliti, nachaliti, like 3, 6, 9 times, and then you engage in what it is that would be something naturally driven to promote wealth, like go about your day of work or try to talk to clients, etc. This gives you that edge. This is what we call like a percentage marker. It elevates your ability to achieve what your goal is.
So there's all kinds of symbolism. And there, I mean, is this what you're talking about? Is this one particular modality, or is this you bringing in all kinds of different things to do something like you just described?
So this is one particular modality. We have in the Tai Wicca overall, you have three main fields, you could say. So that would be like the field of comb magic, the field of Khmer magic, and the field of Lana magic. There are some overlapping aspects, but they are their own individual systems. And inside of those, you have things for wealth, for love, working with ghosts, working with deities, ancestor magic, like pretty much everything that you can think of under the sun. There is a lot that has been put into practice over many generations, especially contributions by what are called lucy, which are known as like forest hermits. And some of my teachers that I study with, they sleep and live in graveyards or in the forest, and they don't have homes, you know, like literal hermits.
Well, and that's a lot like the Indian, you know, the guy who travels across the country and doesn't have his own home and is living from just whatever people give him in a traditional Indian way, not so much the Buddhist way, but I mean it's very similar, right?
In Buddhism, the monks call it tudong. Tudong is like a rite of passage where they must wander, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. I think it's all good. It's good for all of us to wander.
I certainly would get restless if I didn't wander.
Me too. Me too. What had you start down this road? And
Um,
go ahead. Sorry.
I get asked this story so many times, and it it wasn't anything truly remarkable. It was I met a monk in the States some 14, 15 years ago, and I just thought he was cool, and he started teaching me stuff. And then over time, my interest grew deeper. The practices grew deeper. Things started to change in me. My perspective on the world and myself changed. My awareness deepened. And by the time I went to Thailand for the first time, it was kind of like, you know, this just seems like what I'm supposed to do. And then I ended up a few years back, I quit my nursing job and I just went full time into this. And now I'm a world renowned exorcist. I have clients I work with every day in regards to teaching magic and helping. And I have a TV show where I travel around the world filming documentaries in different spiritual settings of different countries and cultures. And it's just, that young man, learning how to meditate in a temple more than a decade ago, never would have imagined this would be where it would go now. I just never would have imagined.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we're paying attention when spirit calls and you answer, you never know. You never know.
I tried to ignore the call for quite a while.
Did you? Did you? Yeah.
And I that was where I experienced the most turbulence in my life. Homelessness, drug addiction, all that. And it was only once I stopped ignoring the call, things just somehow started getting better and working out, and I started improving as a human being. And you can't ignore the call of spirit.
So why do you think the resistance then?
I think it's a very, human feeling to resist change because it's something inherently that we can't understand, but no matter what, we must adhere to. Everything is change in this world, and it doesn't matter how you feel about it. Everything is change. And I think there are some aspects of the not knowing that I fought harder than other aspects of it. And in doing so, I was just fighting against my own growth.
And wouldn't you say we all do that?
It's a very universal story, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is. Um, so tell me a little bit about exorcism. What does that look like?
Oh man, that is why I do heart coherence meditation every single day, because it is the only thing that is managed to keep the PTSD symptoms at not just a manageable level, but to where I can actually live my life, and enjoy my life. So
Before you go on with that, explain to the audience what that's like. I mean, I could, but I'm going to let you. I mean, heart brain coherence is the best meditation there is.
so I have done, to varying levels of success and powerful experiences, talk therapy, hypnotherapy, um, all kind, like quantum template stuff, like just medication, like I mean, you name it, I tried it, because I had a multitude of traumas throughout my life that centered around a lot of violent things that have happened and taken place. The details aren't really relevant. The fact is, I was living in a state of disassociation and derealization with anxiety attacks. And I'm not exaggerating when I say they would last for months at a time. That's just not a way to live. And I would get these periods of reprieve through trying different things. But when I was introduced to heart coherence, and as stupidly simple as it really is, but to genuinely do it, and I started doing it after about a month of doing it, I had zero anxiety attacks, no derealization, no disassociation. My laughing, my smiling was genuine. I was fully present with people, and I had a moment of like, oh, I'm living life now. Oh my gosh. Like, so I swear by heart coherence. I think that is, for me personally, the most effective practice I've come across. And I use that actually when I help people in situations of severe hauntings and demonic oppression.
Well, yeah, I mean, because
It works.
if we're living in the lower three chakras, all we're doing is living in survival on a day-to-day basis and just trying to walk through the day. It's impossible to connect with the heart if we're living in survival. So until we can clean up these lower chakras, there's no access to the heart. And the heart is our divinity, the center of our creativity, our God, or whatever it is you want to call it. But there's no possibility of connecting to the heart if we're constantly in a state of PTSD or anxiety, or, like most of us. Most of us are walking around living like that.
And it's a shame, because when you experience something like that for so long, it becomes a baseline. And that's the most dangerous aspect about it, is when it becomes a baseline, it becomes something that you just subscribe to live with. That's what's scary.
Well, that too. And, I mean, even just with other kinds of things and other work that I've done, let's just take core wounds for an example. If I've done work on core wounds and that core wound is pretty much handled, it's almost like you miss it because it's so unfamiliar not to have it there. So
Eckhart Tolle talks about the pain body.
right. So to be free of it is almost frightening sometimes because we don't know ourselves any different without it.
It it is a blessing, though, because when you release that from yourself, you give yourself the opportunity to not only truly meet yourself for the first time, authentically, but to also discover who it is that you want to be in this world, how it is you want to live. And with all of that trauma, with everything going on, all that noise, you can't really know yourself. And you can't really make up your mind, because of the filters of all the trauma and everything going on, of what it is you actually want out of life. So we kind of have to clear all of that in the first place to get to where it is we're actually trying to go.
Well, and therein lies the lower centers that are all clogged up or going backwards, or in my experience, when I'm doing energy healings, it's almost always the first three chakras that are going backwards. Every single client, every single time. And it's it's impossible to move to any higher state of consciousness when you're stuck in survival. Yeah. So let's go back to what you said, because you said this went on a little tangent because I wanted you to help explain to the audience what a heart coherence meditation is. But you were talking about exorcism, and this is where you start. So do you want to continue on that
Yeah.
level?
Yeah, absolutely. So first we have to define where exorcism is necessary. Now, where exorcism is necessary for me is we go by a three-stage process, which is you have like infestation and manifestation. That is a presence of an entity has exhibited itself in the home. You are experiencing paranormal phenomena. It's not in the head. There's not a question of, do I have an attachment? There is objective phenomena that can be witnessed. That's stage one. This is typically pretty manageable and can be knocked back down or completely erased with doing heart coherence meditation in the home, and having a general practice of sadhana, or just kind of increasing your vibratory state. That alone can negate or prevent a haunting starting in the first place, because these rapport to even lodge themselves within your life.
Can you back up and say that again? Because you cut out for a sec. Something about.
These things, they need rapport so that they can lodge into your life.
Mhm.
And by holding a higher vibration, humans are naturally vibrating at a higher level than these extra dimensional entities, which are not from here in the first place. But it's because of our trauma and it's because of all of these things that we kind of put ourselves in a similar alignment where they can reach us. And then through coercion and tactics, which goes into stage two, internal and external oppression, that's how they're able to sink the hooks in. And that's where they get into your neurology. Now, these things are electromagnetic in quasi physical nature. So they're a bit better at surfing the currents than we consciously are. So you have to keep in mind these things are masters of manipulation. And when it gets to that point, that's usually where people are contacting me. And so I will start off by pretty much giving them techniques for, kind of creating a quieter home front. Vinegar sea salt bowls to help dissipate the manifestation based strength, you know, playing certain chants, um, various little elements like use of iron, etc. These kind of things help us kind of start fighting back physically. And then we get into the trauma. Then we start working on disengaging them from rapport with these entities. Once we've done that and we've got it back into stage one, it's just maintenance. When things get into stage three, or when I arrive where something is obviously residing in the body and there is a personality change and they're experiencing transpossessive states or they are possessed, there is no question about it. It's obvious. It is quite obvious. In those situations, I have to employ various different techniques from my traditions where I kind of get my hands a bit more dirty and I'm a bit more forceful. And it's not me walking the client through the process, it's me taking direct control to the point where we can get them back consciously present with us. And then I put the reins into their hands, empower them, and have them be the ones that banish it fully.
So this sounds a little actually a lot, like some of the processes I do for extraction and extracting an entity from someone in some form or another, in the same vein. From a shamanistic perspective, from the shamans of Peru, the Q'ero tradition from which I am, they believe that you have the energies of 7 generations before you. So if great grandma never dealt with her trauma, I've inherited it and I'm walking around with it. And who knows when that's going to manifest? It's sort of like what you were saying. When the door's a little more open and the traumas are a little bit more present, then that entity has a better and easier access to me as a person and can lodge into wherever, the energetic body or ultimately the physical body, right? And you're saying neurological. So what are some of the processes that you do when it gets to stage 3 and you start taking over? Just for my own, as a shaman to shaman kind of reference. It's fascinating.
So one of the things that I'll do actually, I'll show you. I have a couple of really special tools here. I don't go anywhere without these because I never know when I need them. So I have what's called in my tradition, it's called a bayad. Bayad is like a blessing cloth. So I'll use the saisin. This just makes everything easier because if you've ever seen any Buddhist ceremonies, you see like the white string kind of going everywhere. It's so easy to hold the string, focus your meditative power, focus that soksi, the transmission of power, and just send it through the cotton. So that's one element of it. Then we use one of these, and this is for spreading the nomen. Catholics would use like the cross to fling the holy water, right? So this is our way of doing that.
Now he's holding up, looks like a bamboo sort of stick.
Yep. Yeah. And it has their little reeds.
Yeah.
And the water.
Right.
And in cases, you'll see some of the older monks will like whack you with it. And then
beat it out of you.
Yeah. I mean, they will literally beat the evil out of you. It's something else. It's really something else. But here it is. Okay. So this is a very special cloth that I use. And I made this one. And it's been blessed by many of my teachers, and they've written yarn as well.
Beautiful.
It has sipung smeared on it, which is like beeswax that has been melted and prayed over, and over 100 different herbs, or 108 different herbs are added into it, which all have their own medicinal properties and spiritual components. There's tiger hair on here, actual tiger skin, and the god Puja Saming Prai, which is a tiger Lucy god. And there's even some corpse oil mixed onto it as well for ample communications and a variety of other things. So what I will do typically is I'll come in and I'm wearing this on my shoulder like this. I have my ceremonial attire. And so just carrying this on me has its own power. And I have this for making my nomen, the stick, right? So I'll be doing the holy water. I'll wrap the saisin around the person, around their head. I'll be channeling that energy as I pray, lifting their vibratory state. And then oftentimes what I'll do is I will one of my teachers refers to it as closing the worlds. And so I will put this over the person's head and my head, and we sit together underneath the cloth. And then I do my extraction, where I will forcefully, not physically, well, technically physically, but I will forcefully use my energy to ride into the meridians through the what you would call the Wingate channel, the back of the neck. I will go in, I will pull out whatever tendrils, hooks, whatever you want to call it. I will pull out this embedded, invading energy. And as I pull it out, I will transmute that energy, and I will then put some of my energy, which I will be breathing from a higher place, you could say like God's love, if you will, into that person where the wound is.
It sounds um, very similar with just different modalities. Tell me a little bit about how you feel when the process is over. Do you feel drained? Do you feel um
Uh, it depends. Sometimes I vomit.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I vomit. Sometimes I just really need to sit on my hands and just kind of breathe out for a bit. Um, Other times it will, I call it getting hit with the venom. Other times, if it's a particularly nasty case, I will experience a triggering of my own PTSD, and then I have to go and process that by myself. So it can take root in different ways. Very rarely have I had spontaneous paranormal phenomena occur around me afterwards, because my protection and my protocols in place are now much better than what they were years ago. Now it tends to just kind of be a bit of processing some of that excess energy, or a little bit of that that you kind of get on you, you know.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the for me, it occurs where I need to actually take a nap, like a 2 or 3 hour nap. It just depends
I
on
mean,
who it is and what it,
energy work.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say energy work is intensive on the body. You know, it's working out, honestly.
Yeah, I do fire ceremonies every now and then, and there's usually about 20 people. And that is a lot of space to hold for a number of hours. And usually when I do a fire ceremony, if there are that many people, it's hard to get out of bed the next day until late in the morning, which is not I'm usually up at 4 meditating every single day. But on those days, yeah, I mean, it can be a drain as long as we're not taking in and have our own protective practices. Yes.
Yeah,
So,
we have a thing like a Y crew here, which is um it's a big process where you're cleansing your community. You kind of like you bathe the people like with these blessed waters that are mixed with herbs and all this kind of stuff. You wear like le sinarot, or like poke, like this big like hermit god mask, and it'll call forth ancestors to speak or process through you, or sometimes even the god will move through you. And sometimes you get episodes of possession. I have like recorded footage of that, actually. And then um and then there's usually like an amulet that's made by the master that's given to every person in attendance. I went to one last week for one of my teachers, as Jean Cao, and it's usually like a day and a half event. So you go like the night before in the evening, and there's big ceremony, lots of chanting, a lot of cool, interesting, magical ritual stuff going on. And then the next morning is like all day long. It's kind of like a big long church service, if you will. Like there's a lot of sitting and listening to the monks chanting, and like just now go here, do this, now do that. So, and it takes a lot out of you, even if you're just attending. Like for like a good few days after, you're just tired.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about how much energy goes into just staying anxious, right? If instead you're using that energy in this way, it's about the same amount of energy. It's just used in a much better way.
Well, and a lot of times these energies that you're feeling in like a Y crew, for example, are energies that you're not necessarily exposed to every day. Perfect example would be like, so we offer three pigs heads, bottles of Sangsum, like alcohol, many fruits, flowers, incense, all this stuff. And this is like the amount of stuff that's needed as like an offering. And then there's like a kata, which takes about like 30 to 40 minutes to recite, and that's done. And this is also that you can call what's known as the Loipat. And the Loipat is a pantheon. Um, it's the representation of all 108 high Lucy gods, these hermit sage spirits. And so they descend down and then they're there through the whole ceremony for everything that comes after. So for a lot of people, maybe they only have one crew, one teacher, one master that they go to, and they'll go to that Y crew once a year.
Mm.
Do you think that on an average daily basis, they're surrounded by the collective spiritual pressure of these 108 high gods? No. It's probably only happening one time a year, and it's that one day when they go. So there are certain elements of energy that people are exposed to in ceremonies like this, and probably in places like you've seen in Peru, where it's like you're not getting that every day. So you will see some interesting reactions from people.
Yes, I mean, even in the fire ceremony that I do, you can feel the energy. I mean, things have moved in the trees in the areas near us. I had one woman pass out and fall down. And it just depends on who's, and that woman is extremely sensitive to energy. I mean, anytime I do an energy healing with her, she's barely on the table and she's already, doing her thing, flitting around and, sort of convulsing and doing her thing. But yeah, I think too, it makes a difference. I'm sure you would agree. If you already have a decent spiritual practice, you're already coming at it with a much more open vessel than someone who's a little more resistant.
I call it like so having a sadhana, like a daily spiritual practice, and something that you cultivate over time. Um, I really like using like analogies and metaphors because I think they're really helpful for people in like a better understanding. So to me, having these kind of practices already, it's the equivalent of like spiritually lifting weights. So if you don't lift weights or work out, and then you go with one of your friends who works out all the time, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, I got a good workout in today," and you're like, "Oh, I'm dying." It's like it's kind of the same. Like you're just not used to working out, so the more you do it and practice, you do develop that kind of strength, that resistance, that ability to shoulder more.
That, and I also noticed even some of my regular meditation students who then come for an energy healing. So these are people who already trust me, who already know me, who've been coming for years. It still takes them sometimes a few sessions in an energy healing session to actually let go and realize that it's okay to let me get you into trance and then start the process instead of fighting and resisting, because people are skeptical, even if they trust you sometimes.
I stopped doing like inductions and draw, and I'm not assuming that's what you do, but like I stopped doing inductions and like long form like bringing people into trance states, because it took away from the time of what I actually want to be doing. So what I started doing, which I found to be just more efficient for me, is I get people doing breath work. I get them high on the oxygen, I get those endorphins flowing, and then they're already in a hypnagogic state. And then it's just like we just go from there. And then
Right.
if there's any resistance happening as we're doing it, then it's a question of like, okay, so what am I talking to right now? What is expressing right now? Let's deal with that. Let's not call it resistance or call it this or that. Is what expression of you am I talking to you right now? Do you know what's expressing right now? What's behind that? What's the color? Where is it coming from in your body? Like, and then you just kind of you get, I mean, you know how the drill is. Like,
Yeah.
you just go from there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating to me. And then I really love it when I have a client who knows nothing about it, but is all in. And by the end, they're like, oh my God, that was the most powerful experience I've ever had in my life. I could feel your love pouring into me. And, those are the most rewarding times, at least for me.
I mean, being able to observe meta is a very powerful experience because to feel it is one thing entirely untouchable and so perfectly beautiful within this universe. But
And
the only thing
really, just
better,
just so our audience knows, metta, loving kindness.
exactly.
Go ahead.
But the only thing better than that is to be able to give it.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's, when I'm done with an extraction or illumination or whatever process I'm doing, then they're fully in trance, but I'm on my own bringing my energy up even higher and then giving it to them. One of the guys in one of my clients a week and a half ago, it was the most beautiful session I've ever had in my life. This man just started scooping up the energy that I was giving him. And he like hugged his own energetic body. And then he keeps scooping up the love and he put it on his face and his lips and his arms and his torso. And all the while he's in a trance, he's completely out. It was so beautiful. It brought me to tears. I didn't want him to come out. I was like, I'm not moving you. You're just going to keep on pulling it in because clearly this is what you need. I'm going to keep giving it. It was so beautiful. And those are the
I
most
love that.
rewarding. Yeah, the most rewarding times, really. So what else can you tell us? How do we live a life illuminated there, Sadhu Dah?
I mean, really, it's like I tell my students and people that I'm, generally interacting with is like I don't really have anything of special value or difference than any other person, out there in the world. I just kind of chose to put one foot after the other, and this is where it got me, and I was fortunate enough to have some, for me, very influential and powerful like role models and figures that I highly respect, and I think that people shouldn't underestimate the value of a teacher. Um, that's kind of one of my big things, and it doesn't even have to be, me. You know what I mean? It's like as long as you find somebody that can help nurture you along that path as you're starting, and even if you're already progressing on it, quite a bit. Um, it's so absolutely vital. And one of the things that I've seen recently, I can't quite pinpoint when I started to notice it, but there's been this, new age kind of metaphysical upstart that's happened over the past, several years, and there are some aspects of it that I don't really agree with. And one of those is the whole like, kill your teacher, you don't need a teacher, like you're a perfect guru all on your own. And I'm like, on some aspects of that, I understand what you're saying. Like I get where you're coming from, but But no, 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 no. There is a reason why, shamans and these types of individuals who were spiritual leaders were the head of tribes. They were the entire leading force and voice of their community because it's a very vital role. It's a very nurturing role. And I think that we shouldn't underestimate that, and that we should still see the value of that, especially like where I live over here in Thailand. Like, I mean, you can't go anywhere without seeing some sort of spiritual, leader or a monk, an Ajahn, a Lucy, and people have profound respect for that. I can't tell you the last time I saw that unless I was in a personal setting of people like that were my type of community in the US. You don't just see it in the streets.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I think you bring up a really valuable point because it doesn't matter how many years I've been on the path, I still need a teacher too, you know. I don't have
Same.
all the answers, and I don't want to ever stop growing. I don't ever want to stop being challenged. I mean, about 2 months ago, I had one of the biggest meltdowns and breakthroughs of my entire life, and that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't open and receptive to continually learning and growing and, all of that. And I don't pretend to have all the answers for my students, but I'm happy to
I'm
be their teacher.
studying.
Yeah, yeah. I always want to be a student. Always, always want to be a student. Yeah. So, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Is there anything you want to leave us with before I say goodbye?
Well, not unless you can think of anything.
No, it's great. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been fascinating, really, really.
Thank you for having me.